Look around the animal kingdom. Every single creature out there came with a coat, fur, feathers, scales, blubber, installed at the factory free of charge. And then there's you. You are the one animal on Earth that has to get dressed. You were born naked, you'll stay naked your whole life, and you will spend a fortune and a good chunk of every morning covering that up. When did that start? And why? The school answer is for warmth and modesty. That answer is half wrong, and the way we figure out the other half is genuinely insane. We worked out when humans invented clothes by studying lice. Start with the obvious thing nobody finds weird enough. You are an ape, and apes are covered in hair. Chimps, gorillas, orangutans, all of them wear a thick coat they never take off. You, somehow, are the bald one. Among nearly 5,000 species of mammal, almost all of them are furry. You're in the strange little club with whales, naked mole rats, and elephants that mostly gave it up. Somewhere over 1 million years ago, going by the genetics of our skin, our ancestors traded their fur away. We are quite literally the naked ape, and we didn't lose it evenly all over. We kept hair exactly where it still earns its place, most obviously on the head, shading the brain from the tropical sun. Everywhere else, the coat quietly switched off and never came back. Why would an animal ditch its own free coat? The leading idea, and it's still an idea, scientists argue the details, is heat. Our ancestors became long-distance walkers and runners on a baking African savanna, and fur is terrible for that. So we became sweaty instead. Bare skin and millions of sweat glands, a built-in cooling system that let us keep moving in the midday heat while furrier animals had to stop and pant in the shade. Not everyone is sold on the cooling story. Some researchers think we shed fur to shake off ticks and lice. Others credit plain old mate choice. But staying cool is the front runner, and the sweat glands are hard to argue with. Either way, it was a brilliant move. We engineered ourselves into the perfect tropical endurance machine. There was just one tiny catch, a catch that wouldn't matter for ages, until the day we walked somewhere cold. Because here's what we'd done. We had thrown away the one piece of survival gear every other mammal is born wearing. Perfect for the equator. A death sentence the moment the temperature dropped. So we did the most human thing imaginable. We reinvented the exact thing we just deleted, except detachable. That's all clothing really is. A removable fur. We took the coat off our bodies, and 100,000 years later, we're still putting it back on every morning, one hoodie at a time. So when do we start? And here's where it gets frustrating. Stone tools last millions of years. Bones fossilize. But clothing, animal hides, plant fibers, leather, fur rots. It falls apart in centuries, not millennia. The oldest actual scraps of preserved clothing are only a few thousand years old, which is practically yesterday. Archaeology is built on the stuff that lasts: stone, bone, shell, teeth. Clothing belongs to the vast, invisible category of human life that simply rotted away and took its own history with it. So you've got an invention that may be older than our species, that left almost no physical trace. Dating it should be impossible. You can't carbon date a sweater that turned to dust 90,000 years ago. You need a witness, something that was there, that didn't rot, and that kept a record. As it turns out, one did. And it's disgusting. Humans are host to lice. And not just one kind. We have two close cousins that live in two completely different places. There's the head louse, which lives sensibly in the hair on your head. And there's the body louse, which does something very specific and very telling. It does not live on your body at all. It lives in your clothing. It crawls onto you to feed, then scuttles back to lay its eggs in the seams of your clothes. Think about what that means. The body louse is an animal whose entire habitat, its home, its nursery, is fabric. It literally cannot exist without clothing. Strip the clothes away and its whole world vanishes. It is, quite possibly, the only creature on Earth whose survival depends entirely on human fashion. So a body louse is not just a parasite. It's a fossil of a behavior. Here's the genius part. The body louse evolved from the head louse. It's a newer branch on the family tree. And it could only have branched off once there was a brand new habitat for it to move into: clothes. No clothing, no fabric seams, no body louse. So if you can date when the body louse split from the head louse, you've dated near enough when humans started wearing clothes regularly. And you can date that by counting the mutations that have piled up between the two, a molecular clock. When scientists did it, the body louse turned out to have split from the head louse somewhere between roughly 83,000 and 170,000 years ago, which means clothing is at least that old, possibly older than our species spreading out of Africa. Now, scientists still argue over the exact figure. An earlier estimate landed closer to 100,000 years. A later and more careful one pushed it back toward 170. But every version of the math tells the same story. Clothing is old. Properly old. Older than cave paintings, older than farming, older than the wheel by a factor of dozens. Sit with that. We figured out the invention of clothing by reading the family tree of the bug that lives in it. The most personal technology in human history, dated by its parasites. The louse in the seam of your jeans is, in the most literal sense, the receipt. Now the why. We're taught clothing is about two things, warmth and modesty. The modesty part is mostly backwards. Shame about nudity is recent, and it's cultural. It changes wildly from one society to the next, and plenty of human cultures have happily worn almost nothing for their entire history without anyone clutching their pearls. The first clothes were not invented to spare anyone's blushes. Modesty is a story we layered on top, pun intended, thousands of years later. The original reason was much more blunt. Don't freeze to death. And this is the part that should genuinely impress you. Clothing isn't just a comfort. It's the single piece of technology that let a tropical, fur-less ape conquer the entire planet. Think about it. Without a removable coat, we are stuck in a warm band around the equator forever. The moment we could wrap ourselves in someone else's fur, we could walk into the cold, into Ice Age Europe, across the frozen north, eventually into places that are lethally cold for a bare-skinned animal. Every human living anywhere that gets a real winter is only there because, at some point, an ancestor figured out how to wear a dead animal. And it compounds. A coat lets you survive one hard winter. Surviving winters lets you settle the north. Settling the north puts you within reach of the next cold place, and the next. Clothing didn't open one door. It opened all of them, in sequence, until a sweaty equatorial ape was somehow raising children inside the Arctic Circle. Clothing didn't just keep us warm. It unlocked the entire map. But there's wearing a coat, and then there's wearing a good coat. Draping a loose hide over your shoulders like a cape is better than nothing. But it leaks heat from every gap. The real revolution was tailoring. Cutting skins to shape and sewing them into fitted clothing that traps a layer of warm air against you. And for that, you need a very specific invention, the eyed needle with a hole to pull thread through. Those start showing up more than 40,000 years ago. Some researchers even suspect this was an edge. The evidence hints that our species may have been the better tailors, sewing snug, fitted gear, while our cold-adapted cousins, the Neanderthals, seem to have leaned more on simpler draped hides. It's debated, and you shouldn't bet the farm on it, but it's possible that one quiet reason we're still here and they aren't comes down, partly, to who had the better coat. So here's the honest version, with the cozy sweater pulled off. You are a tropical ape that deliberately deleted its own fur to stay cool. And then, when that backfired in the cold, spent the next 100,000 plus years building a replacement fur out of dead animals and plants, one you have to put on and take off every single day for the rest of your life. Clothing isn't decoration that humans added once we got fancy. It's survival gear, the prosthetic coat that turned a fragile equatorial primate into the only animal that lives on every continent. And the only reason we know roughly when this all began is that a single louse climbed into the very first garment, found it cozy, and have been filing the paperwork ever since. And the strangest part? Your body still hasn't accepted the breakup. Deep down, your skin is running software written for an animal that was covered in fur. It still has all the old reflexes, the machinery to fluff up a coat, to trap warm air in fur, wired and ready to go. It just doesn't have the fur anymore. You're not broken. You're a naked ape in a borrowed coat, running a body that's still convinced it has one of its own. So tonight, when you peel off your jacket and drop it on a chair, remember what it actually is. Not fashion, not modesty. A detachable fur 100 and some thousand years old, invented by a sweaty ape that outsmarted its own thermostat, and dated for us by the parasites that have been quietly living in our laundry the whole time. The fish, of course, never needed any of this. It stayed in the one place its body was actually built for, and it has been judging us for leaving ever since. It is not sorry. Subscribe for more honest reasons your body is the way it is. Next episode, why you get goosebumps your skin still trying every cold morning to raise a coat that hasn't existed for a million years.